Anyways, I probably just left the doors on and the lights on too long or something, but it's a strong example of what could happen if you're constantly targeted by creepy stalkers or obsessive fans. They could even sell you a bad car designed to track you or have a tracker in it, or remote disabling software, or could just be a freaky bad contract from somebody who sells freaky bad contracts. But in this case, I'm hoping simply I just ran the battery too low, and having my battery bank charged up with the correct attachments on hand to recharge the battery should do the trick, hopefully, in getting this thing running again when it really should have never stopped. Not when it's so brand new and I already replaced the entire freaking battery. But the alternator might be on the way out. I do use it a lot. And it is 150,000 some odd miles. That can happen. But you can also be hyper-targeted because of wealth, power, fame, status, or even genetic or cultural heritage. And it can, in fact, ruin your entire life over and over again. And you do have to watch out for it, depending on who you are. And sometimes you don't even get to know. And that's the torture and the beauty of, well, being tortured and somebody calling it beauty and the other people saying, please stop torturing us and calling it beauty. It's just evil. This sucks. I don't have a garage I can plug this into and charge it. I just have to go off. Please, goodness gracious, everything in my car-living body, please let me survive a basic test of the American economy trying to kill me constantly. And get this, it's been happening my entire life since my family lost their house in the 2008 economic crisis. Yeah, or, the shit that killed a bunch of people and left a bunch of people homeless. Not that long ago. And what was happening probably during that? A bunch of evil espionage down to we'll just reset the dial and send them out with a $300,000 transmission issue in terms of life lost or something like that, easily. Does it mean, well, it's very hard to stay on top of a machine and a small budget when they pay you basically not enough to be alive. Down to the fact of the matter is, it's pretty much proven as far as everywhere I look almost, and I've not been far. But boy, have I met and talked to some people and seen some things and looked at prices the entire time I've been alive, since a very young age. But yeah, anyways, hopefully, let me just see if I've already solved this massive crisis of an issue by just being prepared and make sure I charge this. And if I don't have it charged, maybe I just go walk into work or whatever, charge it up, not make a big deal out of that. And I got my whole work outfit in the car. Obviously you don't want to tell off your boss. I put in my proper 2 weeks and stuff, if the job is even worth putting in the 2 weeks for, which this one was. It was a good job overall based on the coworkers and experience inside and driving. It was better than my last Domino's experience, and really every other job I ever had, actually, in terms of how easy it was and enjoyable it was, even though it was incredibly stressful and horrible, mainly because of LGBTQ factors that brought me to this damn town in the first place, just being basically wanting to visit my grandparents on the way to being trans in Washington. But honestly, I do believe I was mechanically sabotaged into a ridiculous show of events. But it could save some lives, potentially, to be aware of a lot of this shit and not get screwed over in a bad deal to the best of your ability if you only have a little bit of money. A lot of times, you're better off taking the bus back to mommy or daddy or a homeless shelter or something. But you got to be careful with last year money, especially if you're in a shoddy car situation. But yeah, let me see if I already fixed it or if I got to deal with torture. Let's see. Well, it does look like it's not maintaining ignition. I'm gonna give it some gas to keep it running for a little bit. Sometimes that can be the issue. You might just run your voltometer of your battery down too low. Unfortunately, this model, which I think is ridiculous in any car that doesn't at least have the cold and hot gauge and a voltometer to show you the current volts the battery is at, so you know. Oh shit, let me make sure I don't let that fucking incredibly important cable for my battery charger. I always want to unplug that thing before I start the car. It's really just there in most cases to charge the battery up. You remove it usually, and then you start the car so you don't create backfire and electrical issues. But the other thing that can happen is if you leave cords or anything dangling around in that engine bay, there's a crazy fast radiator blade in there that can chop off your finger way harder than that fucking PC case fan. It is a PC case fan times a lawnmower, if you understand that. So I'm gonna go ahead and let my foot off the gas shortly. But what I'm doing right now is letting the alternator spin, which spins a magnet and creates an electrical charge which goes to the battery, which I just showed, similar to that. It's a little generator like you get in a Honda generator, but it is basically the same one as a little teeny Honda generator, even smaller than the cheapest Honda generators, because it's only usually meant to run the radio and a couple of the built-in electronics and not a bunch of extra shit. It's usually supposed to be just a phone or two and time to charge it between. Unless you get an upgraded alternator or a vehicle that's more heavy duty like the newer modern hybrids I was just talking about. There's a lot of bullshit built into the old stuff. But right now what I'm doing is I'm holding the RPMs of the engine high with the car in park, or in some cases if you have a manual transmission car, the car in neutral. I'm holding my foot down on the gas to about 2,000 RPMs. And if I didn't have another battery bank around, or my battery bank was low, I would sit here for up to 15 minutes straight, just holding it at 2,000 RPM, making sure I'm watching the cold and hot gauge to make sure it doesn't overheat and ruin the whole engine. And if it starts going that way, you're better off shutting it down and calling everybody you know for help, or really getting on YouTube and really considering, can I sit around this area for a day or two, and do I have the money for parts and tools to fix this potentially massive crisis? Because it can end somebody's life to have a hot car in the wrong environment, especially if it's broken down or shitty. But what I'm doing, I'm just going to leave it, like I said, up to 15 minutes. You might want to leave this thing fucking charging. One thing you don't want to do is let those cords fall down into your fucking engine bay, into that radiator, because it'll create probably up to $2,000 in damages if you have somebody fix it. If you change the radiator and the entire coolant system, which honestly, you can learn it in a day on YouTube and deal with it, a lot of cases, in under $700 in parts, if you're completely dedicated and know how to follow a guide really well. If you don't, you really should call for help, and make sure you try and trust your local community to the best of your ability, and not just be a solo loner and die in a hot car about it, because that is not fun. It's not the message I want to portray, and I hope nobody else has to deal with that horrible torture, because living in a hot car, I've already done it as a child, I've done it again as an adult. It's awful. I hope nobody has to go through it, but there's people going through a lot worse. Anyways, let me see. Sometimes the electrical system can't even keep your car on when it gets down to a certain charge, but if you just leave it up here for a while, and sometimes you got to clear out, you know, maybe a fuel injector or something. If you got old fuel in there, or crappy fuel, you bought fuel at the wrong station potentially. Sometimes stations can have ground breakage, where a fuel tank may rupture and fill with water, and you might be the first person to find out getting it at the pump, and it wasn't sabotage at all. But stuff like that can happen in all types of CL, and it can sabotage and completely ruin your fucking life. Let's see if it'll stay on. Okay, it went back to the idle. Typical idle on the most cars is usually between a 0 and the 1. Anything outside of that, when it's just sitting idle without my foot on the gas, that usually indicates a problem, especially if you hear a knocking or a scraping or anything coming from the engine bay. You'll want to watch out for those. If there's any steam coming out of the exhaust pipe that's white, you don't want to buy that type of car. It usually means there's a head gasket failure, because the radiator fluid is getting into the oil in the engine and it's getting too hot. What does that mean? You're gonna die from socioeconomics if you don't look at it. So you gotta stay on top of your check engine lights every time you see one. You want to go to like an Advance Auto or any type of AutoZone parts place around America, and there's an OBD2 part down here that you can direct them to in most cars built after 1997. It's around here somewhere. This is the hood release latch, and usually there's also fuses down here that can fix common issues for electrical lights issues, stuff like that. A lot of times it can just be a blown fuse, and you can sometimes find that just by looking around for pop-out areas like this, or you can go see, and you can Google the fuses that go to like, oh, my light's not working, but the bulb doesn't look like it exploded or caught fire, or the housing isn't full of water. Sometimes you just got to go in here and look, and it's just a fuse. But get this, yeah, that's the main things. A lot of the really stuff that people are terrified of is not that hard to deal with if you have $2,000 laying around, or you got the whole thing insured and you know how to maintain it and check the oil and everything, which sometimes should be done, especially if you're in a life or death scenario. Every time you fill the fuel tank, every time, you should go into the engine bay and check the oil. How do you do that? It's really easy. Let's go back to the engine bay. You see this? This is the alternator I was discussing. Oh wait, no. Actually on this vehicle, that appears to be a pump of some sort, but it looks very similar to an alternator. But they usually, oh, that's probably the alternator down there. And right here is that fucking insane fanfare. Those things will kill you or chop off your fingers. Don't stick your hand in those. Don't stick your hand in the belt. Don't go anywhere near it with the engine on. You want to turn out the engine before you touch anything around there. And these belts can explode and fly off if you don't take care of them. They can break off on the highway or slip off and hit you in the face. You don't want to deal with it. But yeah, I'm taking these away. It looks like it's got charged up. It only took a little bit of my charge, and this thing also controls my laptop charge, which unfortunately the alternator output of most vehicles, especially smaller ones, they're not even enough, especially the older ones, to even charge a laptop consistently with it on, unless it's a very low power laptop. And there are very low power laptops. The Apple M1 chip, for example, and equivalents in the slim and light with no discrete graphics cards category, all could probably live off of most cars. But as soon as you get something like I have, an i9 with an RTX 4070 and a 2-hour battery life, no matter what almost, those ones, they won't run on most basic alternators. You need like a truck 230 amp alternator with a bunch of extra power on board that they usually leave for commercial contractors to power up power drills and stuff. But you can get around a lot of this stuff by just getting one of these from Walmart, and I do recommend getting the 4-year warranty for like 15 extra bucks, because you never know how cheap this piece of shit will be and break on you, and you might just need to walk to Walmart on foot to get this whole situation from not ending your life. So people don't understand, cars are no joke. They're a big fucking deal every time. But basically, there's also a dash cam. I got this for another $120 or so at Walmart, and it's the same story. In some heat areas, like in Florida, this thing will fucking melt in a year and a half, and then you're out 150 fucking bucks. And I do mean literally physically melt. I've had it happen to me. They fucking physically melt, depending on where you park, because I have lived in fucking hot car death places where you literally die if you don't leave the fucking windows down. Anyways, moving on from that, the car appears to be back in working order. This 15-minute video, I've described some of the most common, most evil sounds ever. But you do need to also pay attention to screechy brakes, which is when you hit the brake pedal, you hear a screech. That's like a fire alarm in your house going beep, beep. You gotta change the batteries in this motherfucker or you're gonna die maybe. It's the same thing with the brakes. They have a built-in little scrapey piece in them, and the brakes are down here. You can hear it coming from the wheels. There's a little brake pad caliper back here, which is actually easy to fix. In some cars you can do all the brakes, but it is one of the most dangerous items on the car, so you do want to be careful about it and watch the guide like 20 times over if you do it yourself. And make sure you have a real torque wrench, a brand new one. You do not want one from the pawn shop. It will potentially destroy your entire job. You got to be careful. You got to use the right torque wrench and the right socket set anytime you mess with a vital component, and you do need to follow the torque specifications. And sometimes there's even an order in which you need to take off bolts and remove and replace bolts. So you have to pay attention to all that. It is not a Lego set. This thing goes down the road and kills people in the wrong situations. Another thing, I always rain-X the windows and stuff to help water and stuff disperse off the windows, which can get you killed in a lot of situations. Same thing with not changing out these blades. They're super easy. They take 5 minutes. Just watch a YouTube guide, and they're like $5 at Walmart. And sometimes people go 10 years without changing them, and they're gonna basically fucking die in a hurricane because of $10 and not using Google. And I swear on that. I've driven through like 4 or 5 fucking hurricanes and many tropical storms. Fuel cap. Basically, some cars, they have a locking one, some cars don't. If your car doesn't have a locking one, all it takes, somebody can come up, and if they hate you enough, you didn't play your cards right, you're not nice enough, they can put a bunch of shit in your tank and just kill you. Destroy the entire engine. It can happen. Some cars, they don't come with that. What do you gotta do? You gotta be not an asshole in every town, every gas station, every restaurant you ever fucking go to. That's how this place is and always has been. You gotta be fucking careful who you buy from, who you sell to, how you treat everything, how you treat everyone, or it can get you killed. Anyways, a couple other things while we're here. This is the oil dipstick in a lot of cars. It looks like that. A circle, a yellow circle, or a red circle, or a green circle, and a dipstick placed somewhere near the engine. And there's a lot of different engines. They have different levels of cylinders, different sizes, different orientations. This one's side by side, but in other ones the belts will be in completely different locations. So don't pay too much attention to this one. There's always more models out there, and they have almost every model built since 1995 has almost every information or schematic or repair guide you could possibly imagine, unless it's an extremely rare model, which can happen. You got to be careful about the first cars you buy. Sometimes they stop making parts for them 5 years ago. Sometimes they stop making parts for them 20 years ago, and that can make it so much harder to get a part. It can kill you in the wrong situation. And some parts like this car, they're going to have tariffs and stuff soon, which can make the parts dramatically more expensive than domestic products or similar. But yeah, you got to watch out for a lot of this stuff. You got to make sure your tires are good. This is super, super important, especially if you're going to drive through rain or snow. Anytime this thing gets less than like a quarter, basically you want to use a coin, and you need to have some of that coin go missing, bare minimum. If it's getting anywhere close to looking like a rubbery skate, you're probably going to die or kill somebody. You got to be careful. Now let's see. You always want to make sure when you first buy a car, at least at the bare minimum, all your lights are working, turn signals and everything, because again, that can get somebody killed. Another important thing is the load capacity and the stuff you put on the top. It can affect drag and aerodynamic and potentially put overload on the transmission and make it die sooner. You also basically always want to be very, very gentle on the throttle if you care about not dying, and basically never race anywhere and drive the thing like a grandma is basically the only way to make a really piece of shit car last. So you got to be careful, especially if you get a cheap one. They're very hard to keep running and can kill you and other people just because you're poor. Another thing you want to stay on top of is your brake fluid reservoirs. They usually look like a small tank towards the back. Always got to make sure you have the appropriate level of fluid in there. And as you can see, they have actual guides built into the stuff on there. So there's a max fill, and a minimum fill for a lot of stuff. There's 3 main fluids you got to be aware of in the tanks department usually. Your brake fluid, your radiator fluid, and your windshield wiper fluid. This is the windshield wiper fluid. This is the radiator fluid next to the scary computer fans, like a computer water cooling setup for your CPU, but it cools your much more expensive than your average CPU engine. Most engines are anywhere from $2,000 to $10,000 in most entry-level cars to replace. Usually that's just the cost of the engine. If it's labor on top, you could be looking at anywhere from $200,000 to $200,000 more. If you're in a rich person car, that's the $200,000 number. For most people, you're looking at somewhere between $2,000 and $10,000 for the engine, depending on model, and another $2,000 to $10,000 for install, depending on the team, because experience does matter, and it does make a huge difference in the quality of vehicle that you get as terms of repairs and everything. When you're buying a vehicle, you also want to make sure you always at least look under the fucking car and make sure it's not rotting to the fucking core, and the brake pads and fucking brake lines are bursting and shit. That shit's awful. But basically, you're just looking to make sure it's not crazy rusty. If you see some rust, it's not a big deal. Like, it could be way rustier than this right here. You see how that is? This is like an acceptable level of rust on the exhaust pipe itself. And you can see some here on one of the car parts TM. You can look up what it is if you care enough, because you're poor enough. If you're rich enough, don't worry about it. But poor people, they need this kind of help. You want to make sure that this like metal and stuff doesn't look like it's been hit in a horrible accident and then shoddily covered up with a bunch of goop and shit, because somebody might have fucked up and done an awful job that could get you killed. Under here, you always want to check for a leak while it's running too when you're buying the car. If the AC is running, it creates condensate just like a window AC unit, which strips water. That's not the radiator. Don't get upset at the car dealer for trying to sell you a leaking car or something. It'll make you look like a complete fucking idiot. That's just AC condensation. It's just dripping. If it's not steaming and smelling like sweet boiling water, it's not radiator fluid. But the main fluids you got to watch out for: oil. It can leak from a bunch of seals in the engine bay, as well as the engine itself, or just, if you're lucky, just the engine oil cap or filter or bolt didn't get tightened by the last guy. And sometimes they'll sell the entire car for nothing because somebody didn't tighten a bolt that you don't even need a torque wrench for, which is pretty crazy. Some great cars get thrown away for nothing because of stuff like that. But there's a lot of stuff like that that you got to watch out for. Red fluid leaking anywhere, that's usually transmission fluid or hydraulic fluid, and you probably want to walk away. Brake fluid, it's clear, but it's viscosity. It's got viscous qualities to it, and these are the brake lines here. If you see them all wet and damp or dripping on these tire areas, that can be a big red flag. You do need to watch out for that. So yeah, that's a lot of the main stuff. I want to keep it brief into 25 minutes or so, and put my masculine voice to the use for some of the last dad energy I'll ever throw out in such a masculine form. As somebody who basically raised himself alongside my brother in a very hardworking family of poor people, at least by income class in America, which is still quite a bit wealthier than many other places. But I just want to share a little bit of this knowledge. This is the main stuff I wanted to share. There's more stuff in here, but basically every part or issue can be Googled. There is a solution. If you ever follow in my footsteps and you're autistic and have fits easy, I threw, I don't know, probably fucking 300 crying fits just to have this level of information to give you an idea of how horrible this type of ownership can be. To an asset that's basically just to get you to a job. It's basically just to keep you alive in an area and body and mindset that you don't even really want to be in. And it can really be a torturous experience, especially if you never even have the time because you're so fucking busy and so damn poor and always helping people to even pay attention to your own tools and your own life. And unfortunately, it can sabotage you pretty easily if you're not paying attention to your assets and the things around you. Which, I mean, it's horrible. It didn't actually happen to me. I was on top of my stuff the entire time. I was basically getting robbed on Main and still am. But fact of the matter is, while I'm here, while I'm getting robbed, while I'm learning all this stuff, I could save a bunch of other people some time. May as well get involved, be a part of it where I can. So yeah, I'm going to try and think of what else could I share in the next 4 minutes that's incredibly helpful. Shop around for insurance, but don't shop too much. A lot of ads over the years, they say, oh, you're going to get like $22 a month insurance, or oh, they just came up with this new rule. Go try 10 different insurance quotes. To be honest, it's kind of bullshit. Most of them, like we're talking $20 to $30 difference a month, usually tops over anything besides really premium insurance, like a private vendor type of or franchise type of insurance provider. Most of the nationwide ones with a bunch of sales, they're pretty much all within the same spitting distance of each other, so it's kind of bullshit, but it is worth checking every once in a while. You can save 20 to 30 bucks a month, which can be a complete life changer or a game changer for some people in some income brackets. A lot of people don't know. That could be the difference between a kid's Christmas gift or not, depending on how much the parents save all year to buy a $30 gift, and it's the only one they get for years, because that's what $7.99 a wage does to people. Anyways, it's a horrible life for people when they're really poor and really getting screwed over, usually by other poor, desperate people in poor, desperate situations. Thankfully, I'm fairly aware because of years of Google, and I'd like to round out this video saying I'll hopefully be able to provide all types of insightful life advice in a feminine voice. And one of the reasons I share a lot of these videos by choice, which are cryptic, weird, and strange, is quite simply, it's stuff I couldn't tell my brother before he died. That probably would have saved him, and I still have 5 people I desperately care about that he would want me to take care of in my immediate family. So I think they'd be happy to see any of this information if they ever actually just even try to come visit me in Washington, which is potentially a 3,000-mile death journey if you're really not prepared for it and paying attention to what it means to drive across the country and know about rain, snow, hurricanes, mountainous terrains, stretches of land where you might drive 60 miles and there might actually be nothing there depending on the route you take, and how dangerous that can be if you have no cell service and nobody to check in with you or know that you're going that route. You have to be careful about the routes you take and plan carefully, and if possible, make sure other people know what is going on so that you're safe and they're safe. And but yeah, that's a big part of some quick car knowledge. I kind of hate being a car snob, car guy, car whiner, which I did kind of get girls shut down for being a car yapper, and I understand that. It sucks hearing guys talk about cars all the time when it's just constant drivel about, oh, I got the fastest one or whatever. But I've had the fast ones. They're a lot of fun, and guys talk about it for a reason. They build their whole lives around them sometimes because they're tools for creating life and maintaining life. And unfortunately, our economy is based around them in a lot of areas, like here, where there's practically no sidewalks. Like, this is a terrible place for walking. They pretty much require you to have a car to live here. Kind of literally, in my mind, unless you have a house that you can walk to work from, which not everybody gets. But yeah, I'm gonna keep working. It looks like everything's fine. But yeah, here's a 25-minute video of just some valuable knowledge in case anybody wants to go to a green zone, LGBTQIs like me, and I mean LGBTQIA plus. I want to make sure intersexual people, or sorry, well, whatever, any nomenclature for yourselves. I want them all to be valid as long as they aren't hurting other people, which most of the time they aren't, and people are imagining their hurts. But honestly, even when you imagine your hurts, it can still constantly hurt. And that PTSD is real. Trauma repentance feelings are real. Where I have trauma and it physically hurts, like it still happened recently, all the time, from even stuff from my childhood. So it's very hard to comprehend a lot of that if you've never really been through all of that. But it's worth mentioning.